Hey everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. Time just released an extensive article on the work with Palantir and Ukraine, and it's quite a lengthy read here, around 21 minutes, so just take your time to do so when you have a chance. But I did want to go over the Palantir-focused nuggets in the article, considering that they were actually the bulk of the narrative. But starting with how they open, they set the stage here, that this narrative and work of the battlefield technology will go beyond the war, actually, and be a chance to transform the country of Ukraine further on. Their digital transformation minister is quoted as even saying, "Our big mission is to make Ukraine the world's tech R&D lab," and they realized this over time as the war progressed, and some say even got to a stalemate at this point. Now, for what they're actually using Palantir for, they first talk about the widely covered already targeting, and this was in the previous article too from Times, but also the parts that they are working together, like satellite imagery, open source data, drone footage, as well as the reports from their ground troops all working together to actually get to this point to use them for targeting. But they even add the other use cases here, and we already know some of them, or most of them: the war crimes, clearing landmines, as well as resettling displaced refugees. But intriguingly, they also added rooting out corruption, which, if you've seen the news, actually, there has been some leadership swirl and changes happening around in Ukraine, and being free of charge, we know this has been thought about from investors, and I've kind of resigned myself at this point too, that militarily, I'm not expecting anything directly, at least from Ukraine, or even if funds from the US, they might be minimal. I think the opportunity still really is the showcasing of their technology and building it out, and the R&D aspect that they're getting to work there. But also for context, we just need to note this is not all just Palantir, and those same opportunities are being sought too by other big tech companies. So there's still a whole tech infrastructure and ecosystem out there being ran by big tech, but when it comes to their cloud data, security, and just everything, the country just needs to keep on running. But still, this narrative creating a war lab for the future is the priority and the testing of the latest technology. While Karp accurately also adds in that you just can't do this kind of testing domestically versus a battlefield, since it's real conditions here and has to have real results. And that's actually what separates a lot of Palantir's products, especially in the commercial space. They're at the edge of life and death sometimes for these situations, or just the choice between the best and worst decision if there were a failure. Palantir being able to not only operate in these environments, but able to thrive is a whole other story here, and really puts them ahead, in my opinion, when it comes to product development, since they are literally on the front lines. But even with the successful work here, Ukraine is still questioning the future of the country and their work with these companies after the war, and how they'll align with U.S. national interests. But what if they don't, or at least misalign there? I know for Palantir, I have full confidence on them and management staying on mission in doing so. But for other companies, it's not so cut and dry here for obvious reasons, especially when you see how public Palantir is about their support versus pretty much any other company besides a handful. But then they also talk about how normalized this relationship has become too. Palantir visits so much that they've got the routine down. They know their favorite coffee shops, but they still need to remember this is an active country at war. Even if Kyiv is far from the border and majority of fighting, you still need to see and have your guard up. But it also speaks to the mission of Palantir and how much they're willing to show their support. Being there in person and making the trip, as well as doing this continuously, especially at these levels, indicates a strong partnership, in my opinion, more than just a send your product and a good luck call. Palantir, for better or worse, ties them by the waist with the stance of helping Ukraine, so they have to make it count. What also cool is how they paint the intimacy that Palantir is working with Ukrainian officials. These are the decision makers, and there's only less than a dozen local employees they note, so still trying to be secure with who actually works with them in these use cases, and they are literally building and improving their products alongside these top officials, and they meet up under fake names here, that is for the reservations, for that extra added security. Now, after the war too, think of these people who actually get to work with them and all this experience they gain, as well as connections. It shows that Palantir is playing the long game and wants to ensure their clients actually get their value far after the fire is put out, and then maybe they'll help them out later on with other issues. Now, the best paragraph in the article, in my opinion, is this: with a few clicks, a Ukrainian Palantir engineer showed me how they could mine a dizzying array of battlefield data that, until recently, would have taken hundreds of humans to analyze. Palantir software processes raw intelligence from sources including drones, satellites, and Ukrainians on the ground, as well as radar that can see through clouds and thermal images that can detect troop movements and artillery fire. AI-enabled models can then present military officials with the most effective options to target and enemy positions. The models learn and improve with each strike, according to Palantir. So the value from the end user is important here. It clearly paints the picture that the capabilities that they have here is actually useful to them, and the cherry on top too is that it's always improving. Now, they also talk a bit more about the kill chain, which has been covered widely. There's a lot of moving parts, and obviously manual making decisions and isolated data is not optimal for this case, so being able to actually give them the real-time full picture of the battle space fine-tunes this by magnitudes more. And it doesn't necessarily mean just trying to maximize how many people you kill. It's also about, are we hitting the right targets here? Is it more bang for your bucks here, especially when there's resource constraints for Ukraine. But Time also covers Palantir trying to shed its spy company reputation amongst this, although I think that's more pushed by the media. But either way, Palantir isn't only military technology, of course, as we know. Us shareholders know that they work extensively outside the military right now, especially into the commercial expansion that they're doing, but also on the humanitarian front that they point out. Palantir's applications are industry agnostic, and it's up to the use cases to prove their morality in society, in my opinion. And also with the questioning of their reputation, Karp still shares his views on the Western need to get technological superiority. Being able to innovate alongside the government and backing national interests is their imperative, and ensuring that the West can keep its edge. But then we finally get to the big question: after the war. Eventually, the war will end. We don't know how that will look exactly. In my own opinion, I'm not an expert here. But if the Ukrainian government at least stands, there will be an economy to rebuild. They're trying to rebuild Ukraine out as a tech sector in the region. Ukraine has an extensive workforce of tech workers who were actually working for American companies before the war. So really, the government is thinking about these long-term steps here, because donations are just not the answer. And growing their economy will be necessary through investments too. So this is also juicy for shareholders as well. Palantir is helping in applications outside of the battlefield, but still related. They're helping the ministry keep schools open, provide laptops, and also connectivity to conflict zones, as well as national testing. And war will leave certain areas in a rebuilding state, which I'm assuming Palantir's tools will help them determine, and then see the level of rebuilding and functionality of certain places over time, as well as the targeting of necessary resources and supplies to them. So there's a lot of rebuilding here that's going to go in between from when they're a thriving economy again, but also the legal aspects too. Are there war crimes that need to be brought to the court that Ukraine's attorney general just wants to bring up? How will you sift through the vast amounts of data to even get a case and have enough evidence? Well, Palantir pulls these together from satellite images, troop movements, open source data like photos and videos, and this is actually from Ukrainian citizens from social media. And they really want to paint the complete picture here to improve their chances of any cases that they actually want to bring for war crimes. But even bigger is the work that Ukraine is doing right now. They want to export this, and not necessarily just conflict-ridden regions like we've talked about demining, but also the applications to blackouts, to natural disasters, because that's something that happens during wartime as well, and the rebuilding process also occurs. So the applications are huge, and Kyiv is just trying to be more selective though about who works with them, because they've realized over time, just as much as they're getting help, they're also providing an opportunity to improve products, test, iterate, and even just build those relations to an aspiring tech hub in the region. And this is a perfect opportunity to talk about Israel too. Well, we know Israel and Ukraine are in totally different places, especially when they're pre-war strengths and technologies. But will this supercharge with all the conflict zones that Palantir is at and providing their solutions for? It just seems like Palantir is in a perfect position, at least militarily, to take these learnings and compound them for their customers. Now, I'm not saying to take their exact data, of course, but all the learnings here and the methodologies and what they've built out in their products and functionalities, and the company itself and how effective their solutions can be for clients when a new conflict arises. But time will tell, I guess, when we see these results. So read the article in its entirety when you have a chance. Thank you again for listening, but I'll see you in the next video.